Hey guys, tonight we drift back, not hundreds, but tens of thousands of years, to a continent lit by moonlight, dusted with red earth, and echoing with stories that have no beginning or end. You're barefoot, the stars above you so bright they almost hum, and you're following a trail no GPS app has ever dared map. You walk not by signs, but by the feel of the land under your toes. The rustle of a wind-blown spinifex tells you you're on track. A crow's cry is not just background, it's a landmark, and somewhere ahead, someone long ago sang this very route, encoding every twist and tree into melody. You're walking inside a song, and the song is older than writing, older than the pyramids, older than the idea of history itself. You probably wouldn't survive this trip on your own, by the way. Not because of snakes or sunstroke, though yes, those exist, but because you were raised by maps that sit flat and cold on paper. Tonight, we'll unroll a different kind of map, one that's sung aloud, felt underfoot, and remembered in bone. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from, city, country, and local time. It's strangely soothing knowing where this voice finds you tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin just before dawn in the central desert. The air is still cool, still blue with night. In the half-light, the earth doesn't seem to lie flat. It breathes. It rises into buttes and ridges that cast long, sleepy shadows. Here, there are no roads. There is no next town. There is only what the land tells you, and what your ears remember from the last time your uncle or grandmother sang this path aloud. One rock is not just a rock, it's the resting place of a rainbow serpent. A waterhole isn't just a lucky find, it's where a creation ancestor stopped to drink, leaving behind a curl in the river that you'll use to guide yourself later. These are dreaming paths, or what outsiders call songlines, but calling them songs undersells the experience. They're more like the internet, religion, road atlas, weather app, and family reunion, all rolled into one humming melody. Mainstream historians now estimate that some of these oral trails may have been in continuous use for over 30,000 years. That's older than the idea of England, older than the invention of the wheel. And yet, somehow, your steps line up perfectly with those sung thousands of generations before you. What's that in the distance? A line of ghost gums, white bark glowing in the early light. Their placement isn't random. They mark a curve in the songline. One note changes in the verse when you pass them. It's like your Spotify playlist advancing to the next track, but on foot. You hum the change under your breath without even realizing it. You reach a patch of red soil scattered with spinifex grass. One of the stalks is bent slightly to the east. Someone's been here recently. They passed by, perhaps yesterday, humming the same tune, checking the same stars. Your trail is not lonely, even if it looks empty. One foot forward, then the other. You aren't reading a map. You are becoming the map. The quiet humor of this situation isn't lost on you. Imagine showing a modern cartographer your method. Oh, I just sing until I recognize the rocks. It would be the shortest TED Talk in history, but out here, it works. It's always worked. It works better than satellites because when the land changes, as it does in floods, droughts, and time, so does the song. You just sing a different verse. Now the sun peaks over the horizon, brushing gold across the tops of the ghost gums. Light birds begin their chatter. You pause, not to check directions, but to listen. If the song in your head doesn't match what the birds are saying, you've gone off track. You're not lost. You're just out of tune. Adjust. Step left. There. Better. A kangaroo print in the sand confirms it. You're back on the melody. Here's something scholars still debate. How much of these song lines are mnemonic, memory aids, and how much are sacred cosmology? Do they serve purely practical purposes, or do they exist to renew creation with every footstep? Most likely, the answer is both. But like any good bedtime tale, we won't force a conclusion tonight. Some mysteries deserve their own space to breathe. So you continue. With every mile, you find that the tempo of your walk becomes the rhythm of the chant. You don't just walk to the song, you walk the song. A wrong lyric might send you walking to the wrong canyon, but you know it by heart. Your feet do too. A breeze stirs, kicking up red dust and whispering through dry grass. The landscape, for a brief moment, sings back. You hear the echo of your path in the wings of a passing bird, in the sudden hush of a still moment, and in that quiet, you remember. The light grows warmer now, and the land around you begins to stretch and yawn. You feel it in your legs, each step tuned to something deeper than muscle memory. You're not just walking across Australia, you're walking through memory itself. Because here, the land remembers, and it speaks in verses, not coordinates. A gentle rise in the ground tells you to change the song. You hum a different pitch as you approach a rock formation shaped a bit like a sleeping dingo. The song you sing here is slightly playful, bouncing with rhythm. This is a story place. An ancestral being once stopped here to trick another spirit, or maybe to nap. You don't question the why. The point is, the land says something here, and your job is to answer in kind. This is how the land sings to you. That phrase isn't poetic fluff, it's literal. Aboriginal peoples describe certain hills, rivers, even clouds as having a voice. Not metaphorically, a voice. You can't hear it unless you're moving through it the right way, singing the right lines with the right timing. It's like being in a musical theater production where the stage itself cues your next lyric. And you never walk alone. Even when no one is near, the ancestors walk with you, embedded in the melody. Each line of song is a step back in time, an echo of someone who walked the same route while whispering about where to find water, when to avoid certain hills, and how to greet the next group you'll meet. Songlines, after all, are not just navigation tools, they're invitations. You're not just going to a place, you're going through a network of relationships, human, animal, and spirit. And yes, if you're wondering, some of these trails cover ridiculous distances, like hundreds, sometimes thousands, of kilometers. There are songlines that stretch from the desert heart of Australia all the way to the coast. Some connect across language groups that don't even understand each other's spoken words. But the song? That's understood universally. It's tuned to the land, not the language. A musical Esperanto for the bush. A mainstream fact here, researchers now believe that some songlines predate the last ice age. That's over 10,000 years old, folks. For context, that's about when your ancestors, assuming you're not Aboriginal, were just figuring out how to stop chasing woolly mammoths and try this new thing called farming. Meanwhile, songlines were already cross-continent GPS systems that also served as history textbooks and moral guides. The quirky bit? Some songlines are whispered to children in reverse, yes, backward, so they won't remember them too early or use them before they're ready. Imagine a bedtime lullaby sung in reverse to protect sacred knowledge until you're mature enough to hear it right side up. And how do people learn the correct order, tone, rhythm, and tempo for all these roots? Through ceremony, through listening, through walking it over and over, in the heat and the flies and the song, until your feet know it better than your tongue. It's not memorization, it's immersion. It's muscle memory for the soul. You walk on. Ahead is a dry creek bed, now just a scatter of smooth stones and cracked soil. The song changes again, taking on a slower, more mournful quality. Not because the place is sad, but because water hasn't run here in a while. The lyrics reflect that. They speak of a time when the creek was full, when frogs croaked at night and reeds whispered stories. The song adapts to reality. It acknowledges drought, celebrates rain, warns of danger. Scholars still argue whether these tonal shifts are deliberate updates or traditional interpretations. Is it improvisation? Is it preservation? Is it both? One researcher calls it living cartography, another calls it sung country, and someone else, possibly while very tired, probably called it a really weird road trip playlist. All three are correct. As you step across the dried creek, A flock of galas wheels overhead, shouting their pastel pink complaints into the morning. You take it as a good sign. Galas appear in many stories, often as cheeky troublemakers or accidental guides. Either way, they mean you're on track. A ways ahead, a termite mound juts from the ground like a giant sunburnt sculpture. In the song, it marks a turn. You'll veer left just after it, toward a stand of desert oaks whose shade will offer a short break. You hum the verse about the termite mound, noting how the melody dips downward in a way that matches the surrounding valley. It's all connected. Here's the beauty of it. These songs are never just about place. They're about how you're supposed to exist in the place, what you're meant to remember, how to behave, what to share or keep private. The route isn't just about geography, it's about ethics, protocol, respect. In Western traditions, a road is just a line between points. In Aboriginal culture, a songline is a relationship between beings. You step under the desert oak and breathe in. Chee. By now, your feet have begun to ache in that dull, reassuring way that says, yes, you've been moving, but not rushing. You don't rush along a songline. You move in time, in tempo, in trust. And as the sun climbs higher, and the colors of the land shift from gold to burnt orange, you begin to understand something profound. This isn't just a method of navigation, it's a worldview. To truly walk a songline is to believe the land speaks. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally. You reach a dry plain scattered with stones, each one glinting slightly in the sun like quiet watchers. Here, the song turns sharp and rhythmic, matching the crunch under your soles. It's a reminder to stay alert. Why? Because you're nearing a place where water once surged during the dreaming. Flash floods still hit here, even in a land that looks dead dry most of the year. The song remembers even when the ground forgets. Historians love a good map. They hold them up, admire the lines, the colors, the precision. But what they sometimes forget is this. The oldest maps weren't written with ink. They were sung. They were danced. They were whispered in a child's ear before sleep, then tested on long treks under scorching skies. Cartography has its charm, sure, but here, mapping is embodied. Western maps flatten space. They measure, divide, abstract. Songlines, on the other hand, do none of that. They don't reduce. They expand. They don't pin down. They let wander. In fact, they don't even try to make the land understandable. They assume you already understand, or at least that you can learn by listening. It's humbling, honestly. Imagine being trained from birth not to memorize facts, but to move in tune. You'd grow up recognizing that every journey is also a performance, and not a solo one either. Your part has been handed down for generations, and every step you take hums with the footsteps of someone who sang this before you. Now, here's your reality check of the day. If you were dropped in the middle of this landscape right now, with no phone, no Google Maps, and no song in your head, you probably wouldn't last long. This place is beautiful, yes, but it's also brutally indifferent. Water is rare, shadows are precious, and north is a useless concept if you don't know where to find the river that only runs in spring, or the rock that shades lizards at noon. But the song knows. You hum the verse for a fork in the dry creek, a literal decision point in the melody. One path goes toward a known waterhole, the other toward a ceremonial site. You're not just choosing geography, you're choosing storyline. Today, you head toward water. As you walk, you recall a quirky detail told to you by an old uncle once, between bites of bush tomato. Maps can lie, but the land doesn't. And sure, he may have been halfway into a nap at the time, but it stuck with you. Because songlines aren't about belief, they're about utility. No one clings to them out of nostalgia. They work, always have. In fact, when white settlers arrived in Australia and began building roads, they often did so without understanding they were crossing sacred paths. Paths that weren't just symbolic, but deeply, practically important. The results ranged from offensive to disastrous. Explorers got lost, settlements struggled, livestock died, and all the while, people who knew the way were nearby, ignored. One famous example is the expedition of Burke and Wills in the 1860s. They died in the desert, mere kilometers from groups who could have shown them water, shelter, and, yes, a song. Historians still argue whether arrogance or ignorance played the bigger role. Probably both. Either way, you wouldn't want them as your hiking buddies. But back to you. You pause at a rock face streaked with black and orange. It's more than pretty, it's marked. A small engraving, a curl, a line, a dot, tells those who know how to look. Yes, this is the place. Here, the verse turns again. You sit in its shade, sipping from your water skin. A cool breeze brushes past, full of scents, eucalyptus, dust, and something faintly sweet, maybe honey ants nearby. You close your eyes and hear it, not your voice, the land's. A magpie sings overhead. Its melody is complex, spiraling like a flute solo played by someone showing off. You smile. In some stories, the magpie was the first creature to sing the sun into the sky, pulling up the dawn with its voice. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. What matters is that the bird knows this spot too. Its song overlaps with yours, and you feel a quiet sense of affirmation. You are where you are meant to be, not just physically. And here's something else that tickles your mind. Songlines are not solitary things. They intersect, interweave, cross through multiple countries and language groups. So someone you've never met from a community hundreds of kilometers away might know this exact same song, at least the overlapping verses. They'd finish your lyric like an old. The waterhole greets you like an old friend. No dramatic splash or echo, just the gentle glisten of sunlight on still water, framed by cool shadows and tree limbs that reach outward like tired dancers resting in mid-pose. You kneel at the edge, cupping the water in your hands. It's cool, impossibly so after hours of walking in dry heat. The first sip hums through your throat, like a second verse to the song you've been singing. And here's the thing. This stop isn't random. It's planned, encoded, sung about. The verses leading to it carry subtle reminders, slower rhythm, softer tones, lyrics about frogs or shade or relief. It's not just a pit stop. It's a punctuation mark in the melody. Now imagine you had no song, no inherited memory of this place. It would look like nothing special. Maybe a puddle, maybe dry, depending on the season. But to someone walking the line, this waterhole is a sacred syllable in the long sentence of the journey. You sit, listening, not just to birds or wind, but to the absence of urgency. There's a quiet reverence here. You don't splash around, you don't talk loudly. Instead, you mimic what others did centuries before. Settle onto a smooth rock, face the pool, and let the land do the speaking. Songlines don't just carry directional data, they carry etiquette. When to speak, when to wait, when to sing, and when to stop singing altogether. This place is a stop singing kind of place. Your ancestors and those of countless others would gather here not just to drink, but to tell stories, trade goods, perform ceremonies, or wait out the heat of the afternoon. You can almost hear them, clapping sticks, bursts of laughter, the hush of a serious tale. In fact, many of these waterholes were crossroads in both a literal and social sense. Roots from different nations, some separated by hundreds of kilometers, would converge. The songlines intersected, and so did the people. Knowledge passed, marriages arranged, disputes settled, resources shared. Picture a networking event, only barefoot and with more dancing. Mainstream historians now recognize these meeting places as vital nodes in a vast, continent-wide system. And here's your fringe fact. Some anthropologists believe Aboriginal songlines may represent the world's oldest known system of distributed knowledge. That's right. Before libraries, before parchment, before iCloud, there were songs, sung across thousands of kilometers by people who never needed to write anything down. You sip again and watch a lizard flick its tongue at a buzzing insect. Even it seems to know this is a safe zone, a verse of stillness in a long, dusty paragraph. Now your next move isn't just dictated by thirst or foot fatigue, it's woven into the song. The melody doesn't end at the waterhole, it merely softens, then builds again as it rises with the land beyond. And here's where your whole body becomes part of the navigation system. You rise, adjust your pack, and notice the angle of your shadow. It's stretching westward now, thin and reaching. That tells you the sun is past its peak. Time to adjust the rhythm of your steps to match the cooling light. You walk on, and soon your path becomes a mix of soft dunes and scratchy shrubs. The song picks up pace, not hurried but lighter. You remember hearing as a child that this part of the journey is for stretching legs and spirits, a bit of footplay in the melody. Nothing serious ahead, just time, space, and the crunch of red sand beneath your feet. But even here, the land sings. A lonely tree on the crest of a dune, that's a marker. In the verse, it's called the standing cousin, a humorous nod to a real cousin who once got lost and waited beside the tree for hours, only to be found by a group laughing and singing the verse that included him. These stories blur myth and memory so completely, you stop trying to separate them, because they're both true. A tree can be a landmark and a joke. A hill can be a resting place and the sleeping body of a dreaming spirit. The land isn't either or, it's yes and. Scholars still argue whether songlines count as maps in the traditional sense. Some claim they're too metaphorical, others insist they're more accurate than printed topography. The truth probably sits in the middle, curled up with a smirk, eating bush plums, and waiting for the next generation to ask the same question. Ahead, the land begins to rise again. Not dramatically, just a steady incline that asks a little more from your calves. The song helps. It stretches out syllables here, giving your breath room. It was designed for this terrain after all. And this is where your internal compass takes over. Not north, south, east, or west, but feeling. The path curves slightly. You follow. The lyrics shift tone. You hum along. There's no moment of decision, no big reveal. Just one foot, then the other, guided by rhythm and intuition honed over millennia. You crest the ridge and find yourself staring out across a vans. Your steps slow now, not because you're tired, though you are, but because something in the air shifts. There's a stillness, a hush that reaches all the way into your bones. This is not just a location on a journey, it's a place with weight. Not visible weight like a boulder or a mountain, spiritual weight. The kind that makes you stand up straighter, walk quieter, and speak only if the wind says it's okay. You've entered Dreamtime country. Now let's be clear, Dreamtime doesn't mean dreamy, and it definitely isn't just myth. The dreaming, or Chikirpa in some Aboriginal languages, is a complex system of spiritual belief, history, and law. It's when the world was sung into being by ancestral beings, giant emus, serpents, humans with kangaroo feet, you name it, who roamed across the land, shaping rivers, cliffs, trees, and every dusty ridge you've just walked through. And here's the kicker. It's not over. The dreaming isn't a past event, it's ongoing. Every time you sing the songline, you're not just remembering a myth, you're participating in a living tradition. You're helping to keep the world properly aligned. Take a moment to chew on that. Your feet, dusty and blistered, are keeping the world in tune. Who needs gym memberships when cosmological maintenance is built into your hike? You sit for a moment under a lone casuarina tree. Its long, needle-like leaves whisper in the wind, more hiss than rustle. The sound reminds you of rain, though none falls. You've heard that some stories say these trees were planted by spirits to listen on behalf of the ancestors. Whether or not that's true, you lower your voice just in case. The dreaming isn't always obvious. It's subtle. It hides in plain sight. A rock that looks like a lizard? That is the lizard from the story. A hole in the ground that never dries? That's where an ancestor dove underground after creating a mountain range. Everything in this landscape has a story behind it, and the songline is your invitation to remember, not just the shape of the land, but its meaning. Here's a mainstream fact that might surprise you. Many of the longest songlines correspond closely with geological fault lines. Yup. Scientists who initially scoffed at Aboriginal stories later realized those songs were preserving knowledge of fault systems, water tables, and mineral deposits, all without a single satellite. You laugh quietly to yourself, Somewhere in the cosmos, an old ancestor is probably chuckling too. Imagine carrying vital ecological data across 400 generations via lullabies and dance, only for some PhD-toting stranger to discover it in 1993. But back to your moment. The song you hum now has a different feel. It's slower, stretched out like a yawn. It doesn't ask you to move. It asks you to notice. The small burrow near your foot, the curve of the hill, the way the light bounces off a stone, revealing, only briefly, the shimmer of mica in the soil. The land is glittering, very faintly. Not because it's trying to impress you, just because that's what it does. You stand again and move carefully, following the soft rise of the ground. Your steps match the new verse, less melodic, more chant-like. This is the part of the songline that speaks of creation. The verse where the rainbow serpent slithered through the dust and carved this very gully, where the ancestor emu lost a feather and it became a rock that watches travelers even now. One of the more fringe theories, shared only in whispers, is that the songlines are themselves alive, that each time someone sings them, they awaken slightly more. You don't have to believe it, but you do notice the way the air seems to respond when your voice trembles, even slightly, into the wind. You reach a ring of stones, not large, not dramatic, just 10 or so fist-sized rocks arranged in a pattern too regular to be accidental. A marker, a warning, a tribute, all three? The song shifts again here, briefly dropping into a minor key. You don't know why, but you trust the melody, so you bow your head as you pass. Another scholarly debate bubbles up in your memory. Some historians argue about the ownership of dreaming stories. Can one community own a path through a land that overlaps with others? The answer, of course, depends on who you ask. Some groups say yes, it's about custodianship, responsibility. Others say the stories belong to the land, and people just borrow them. Both are true, or neither. Like most ancient systems, it resists tidy conclusions. Your own experience tells you this. The land gives the song, not the other way around. And your job isn't to rewrite it, it's to listen, to remember, to pass it on. As the path curves again, you find a series of low, flat rocks, perfect for sitting. You take the cue and rest. The melody in your head quiets, not gone, just pausing. The way breath pauses between verses. You let the silence settle in. Birds call in the distance. Noisy miners, if your guess is right. Their chatter. You're still lying on the rock when the sky begins to deepen, not with darkness yet, but with that soft, golden prelude to sunset. The light turns syrupy, wrapping everything in a glow that makes even the dry grass look like it's humming. You sit up slowly, brushing grit off your back. The air has cooled slightly, just enough to feel like the land is offering you a sigh of relief. You return the favor, humming again. Your tune shifts automatically. You're not thinking about it. It's just that the sky has changed, so the song must too. Above you, stars begin to bloom. It starts with 1, then 2, then 5. Pinpricks scattered across a blue-purple canvas. You know some of their names in Western terms. Orion, the Southern Cross, maybe even Sirius. But out here, those are new kids on the block. Aboriginal Australians have been reading the sky far longer, and their constellations aren't made by connecting stars with imaginary lines. They're shaped by the darkness between the stars. That's right. In many Aboriginal traditions, constellations form from the shadows, not the light. Take the emu in the sky. You can't see her just yet, but you will. She stretches across the Milky Way, formed entirely from the dark dust lanes that spiral across the galaxy. Her body runs long and horizontal, her head dipping toward the horizon. She is enormous, and she moves with the seasons. The position of the emu changes what kind of activities people undertake. When her legs appear to be running, it's egg collecting season. When she's rising in the evening sky, it's time for initiation rites. She is both calendar and compass, and she's up there, right now, watching. Historians only recently began to grasp the complexity of these sky maps. For a long time, Western academics simply assumed Aboriginal people had no astronomy, only stories. But what are stories if not mnemonic code? What is a constellation if not a way of encoding time and place into something your ancestors can whisper back to you through the stars? You step into a clearing as the first full wave of starlight reveals itself. The horizon softens, the world dims, and still, you're walking the song. Now guided not just by land, but by sky. Your route mirrors a path in the heavens. It's easy to romanticize this, to say, oh, how poetic, and stop there. But stop and consider this. For many Aboriginal groups, these sky maps weren't just backup navigation, they were co-navigation. Your journey on the ground was tied to a mirrored journey above. You weren't just moving through geography, you were syncing with the cosmos. Here's a fun fringe fact. One elder claimed he could navigate 300 kilometers entirely at night, using only starlight and memory of the song. No flashlight, no road signs, just the stars and a melody. Try that next time your GPS dies. You pause to look up, and there she is, the emu. Her head has risen now, and her neck stretches across the band of the Milky Way. You hum a verse associated with her. It's low, drawn out, and rhythmic. It makes your chest vibrate. You don't know the whole thing. This part belongs to another clan, but you know enough to greet her. To your right, a small line of stones follows the edge of the clearing. Not random. Another marker. In the verse, this is where you look up and check the sky's mirror against the land. If the stars don't match the melody's phase, you've misjudged your timing. But tonight, you're in perfect sync. One scholarly debate touches on this precise alignment. Were songlines originally composed based on celestial routes? Or did people assign sky patterns after the land songs were developed? Did the stories start on the ground or in the stars? There's no clear answer. Probably both. The best Aboriginal knowledge systems aren't about which came first. They're about how beautifully everything fits together. You keep walking, the stars now casting faint shadows as your eyes adjust. No torch needed. You see just fine. The moon rises low and orange in the east, lending everything a gentle glow. You sing a verse about the moon, how she once argued with the sun, and now follows him at a polite distance, too shy to show her full face during the day. You think about how stories like that would be considered myths in textbooks, but here they serve a purpose. They encode lunar phases, agricultural cues, tides, and even moods. The moon is shy? Maybe. But she also tells you when to rest, when to travel, and when to look for certain kinds of bush tucker. Your feet crunch over dried seed pods, and the sound makes you smile. Somewhere in a younger verse, there's a line that says, "If it sounds like laughter, but no one's near, the pod women are whispering secrets." It's nonsense, of course, but also not nonsense at all. The wind stirs again. This time it's cooler. Night has taken over fully now, but you don't feel alone. The land is still singing, just more quietly, like it's whispering a lullaby to its sea. The moonlight lays down a pale trail for you now, so faint it's almost more of a suggestion than a path. But you trust it. After all, you've been following less tangible things all day. Songs, stories, rhythms, wind. This is just one more note in the melody, a silver one. Ahead, a cluster of stones juts from the earth, worn smooth by time and footsteps. They form a kind of gateway, two taller ones flanked by squat, rounded boulders. You don't need a sign to tell you this is a sacred space. The air is heavier here, not ominous, just attentive, as if the very rocks are listening in. You slow your pace and shift the tone of your humming. The songline, you remember, dips here, not in volume, but in depth. The lyrics move into a minor key, more drawn out, more careful. This part of the route is not just topographical, it's ceremonial. This is where the land speaks clearly, if you're quiet enough to hear. Each of these stones has a name, though not always the same one. Different communities have different verses for this spot, depending on their direction of approach. One might call it the place where the serpent rested. Another, the woman who refused to go home. The name changes, but the story hums along the same fault line. That's one of the marvels of this system. It's flexible, yet coherent. You could walk this path as a child, as an adult, or as an elder, and the song would greet you differently each time, layered with new meanings, verses you weren't ready for until now. The map updates, but the foundation stays. And here's your mainstream history tidbit. Many anthropologists now compare this structure to something like layered oral coding. Multiple layers of information embedded in a single story, accessed differently depending on age, role, gender, or purpose. It's like unlocking different folders within the same file, except with your feet and your voice. You approach the tallest stone and sit beside it, placing your hand on its warm flank. For a moment, you don't hum. You just breathe. The stone, too, seems to breathe in its own way, radiating heat it absorbed during the day, exhaling it into the cool air like an ancient lung. You recall something an elder once told you, leaning on his walking stick with the kind of slow grace that makes time pause. Every stone you see has already heard the song. You don't teach the land, you remind it. That stuck with you, especially now as you tap one rhythm, gently on the stone's surface, just enough to make it vibrate under your fingers. It doesn't respond. It doesn't need to. It's already part of the chorus. You rise, your bones creaking slightly. The melody lifts again as you walk, and with it, your thoughts float to how even something as seemingly static as a hill or rock can be dynamic in the story. Which brings you to the next marvel, toponymy, or the naming of place. Western maps name places after kings, battles, or dead white guys who once tripped over a log and said, "I claim this." But here, places are named for what happened there, not just physically, but spiritually. A waterhole isn't called Johnson Spring, it's called Where the Kangaroo Wept, or Where the Fire Turned to Ash. The names aren't just labels, they're verbs, events, living memory. You pass a series of small pits in the ground, grinding stones. You recognize the shape immediately. Women would have sat here centuries ago and yesterday, crushing seeds, laughing, whispering, adding new verses to the old ones with every pass of the stone. The rhythm of the grinding became a kind of heartbeat to the land, sinking people to earth without a word. You kneel beside one of the indentations and run your fingers through it. It's smooth, deep. It hums a little if you press your palm flat. You try a verse in a low whisper, one that speaks of this very place, and suddenly you can see them. Not with your eyes, not like a ghost story, but in your mind's eye. Women grinding, talking, a baby sleeping in a cool hollow, someone chuckling as a lizard darts by. A whole world in motion, once and still. Here's a delightful fringe tidbit. In some places, the songlines describe not only where to go, but what jokes are appropriate to tell along the way. Seriously, a verse might change tone and tempo to indicate a place where humor is allowed, or not. Imagine your GPS pausing at a rest stop to say, "Now's a great time for a dad joke." That's the vibe. You pass beyond the grinding stones and enter a flatter stretch of land. The horizon opens again, and the stars above you widen their dance. The Milky Way looks closer than before, a soft brush stroke across the heavens. The ground is warm from the day's heat. You feel it through your soles. Each step releases just a little warmth, like the earth is giving you back energy. You're not walking on it, you're walking with it. The songline you're following now is particularly melodic. You know this stretch from your childhood. It's the verse that children are taught. The dingo calls fade into the night, leaving behind a silence so complete it almost hums. Not empty silence, the kind that wraps around you like a soft blanket. A silence full of presence. You keep walking. The songline softens again here, like a lull in conversation, giving space for the landscape to speak on its own. You're entering a trade crossing now. It doesn't look like much, just a wide clearing ringed with squat trees and a few piles of ochre-colored stone. But if you know what to look for, you see the signs. A few scattered shells, far from any ocean. Charred wood from a long-cooled fire pit. Faint carvings on a tree trunk that lean toward abstraction but hum with intent. This was a hub, a node, a kind of crossroads where songlines and people from far-flung places converged to exchange not just goods, but knowledge, laughter, and responsibility. You can almost feel the energy lingering. This is where stories traded owners, where songs overlapped, and where arguments were settled with a clapstick rhythm and a glance toward the stars. You pause in the center of the space, allowing your eyes to trace the invisible lines leading in from all directions, like spokes of a great wheel. This wasn't just a market. It was a ceremony in itself. The act of gathering here was sacred. Aboriginal Australians were never nomads in the rootless, wander-about sense. They moved with purpose, following routes handed down across time like inheritance. And trade was essential, not just for survival, but for the health of social bonds. People would carry ochre from the desert, shells from the coast, grinding stones, feathers, fire-hardened tools, and stories shaped like riddles. A mainstream historical note here, some of these trade routes stretched across more than 1,000 kilometers, long before camels, trucks, or railways. You could trace a piece of ochre from the central desert all the way to the northern tropics, passed hand to hand, verse to verse. The quirk? The goods themselves weren't always the point. Sometimes the exchange was symbolic. You'd hand over a carved item not to use it, but to affirm a relationship, a physical receipt of connection. You look down and see a small polished stone resting in a dent in the earth. Someone left it here, maybe a day ago, maybe 50 years ago. You don't pick it up. That's not what it's for. It belongs to the place now, like the verse about the wandering tree that grew legs and walked here once, only to fall asleep and become a permanent shade tree for future gatherings. You take a seat on a log near the clearing's edge and feel the cool of the wood seep through your trousers. Around you, the night continues humming. Insects buzz with a rhythm that matches your breath. A small owl trills once, then goes quiet again, like a punctuation mark in the soft sentence of the forest. You remember that this place, like all along the songline, comes with rules. Not laws written down, but agreements. You can't just show up and claim it. To use a space like this, you need to be invited. Your presence is part of the melody, yes, but it has to harmonize. In some groups, these rules were literally sung. Whole verses devoted to how not to be rude. Don't arrive unannounced. Don't take more than you need. Don't point at sacred sites. The lyrics taught manners before the concept of manners had ever made it to print. Scholars still discuss whether this form of education was more effective than modern institutional methods. Did people learn better through song and movement than through recitation and repetition? The current thinking? Very possibly, especially when the stakes were survival, and your next water source was a 3-day walk and 1 verse away. You stand again, stretching your arms toward the stars. The Milky Way arches like a glowing river overhead, and in this moment, you feel very small. Not in a bad way, in the best way, like a grain of sand on an enormous musical beach, one note in a timeless composition. You step to the edge of the clearing, where the songline splits. This is one of those junctions with options. One path continues toward a mountain range, ceremonial ground used only at certain times of the year. The other curves toward the coast, eventually linking up with a freshwater spring near what's now a town whose name doesn't appear in any verse. You choose the latter. Your hum shifts to match the change. The song here picks up a new rhythm, lilting and full of movement. It feels like a walking song, a journey between places song, the kind that lets your mind wander while your body just follows along. As you go, you notice markings in the sand. Others have walked here recently. A pair of barefoot tracks, adult-sized. A smaller set beside them. Parent and child, maybe. Another ripple in the song. Another line in the harmony. Even if you never meet them, their presence folds into the story. You carry their echo forward, just as someone else will carry way. You walk deeper into the scrubland now, where the land opens wide and low. The air thins a little, cooler, drier. The trees have stepped back, letting the sky stretch out above you like a vast painted ceiling. But even here, seemingly bare and silent, the landscape continues to speak. It speaks in bark, in stone, in soft indentations so subtle you'd miss them if you weren't tuned to the rhythm. And tonight, you are. You approach a tree with a split trunk, like two arms reaching skyward. On its side, just above eye level, is a carved symbol. Faint, worn by time and weather, but still unmistakable to someone who knows what they're looking for. This is one of the whispers in the bark. Aboriginal people use trees not just as shade or shelter, but as memory keepers. Carvings told stories, marked boundaries, and remembered events. These weren't decorations. They were signposts in a language of curves and cuts, placed with purpose. You step closer and gently run your fingers across the markings. You don't know this tree's full story. It may belong to a group from hundreds of kilometers away, but the rhythm of the curves matches a pattern in your song, just a half line, a passing reference, but enough to know you're on the right track. Here's a mainstream fact. Many of these carved trees, known today as scarred or message trees, were once common along major songlines. They marked campsites, ceremony grounds, or served as directional cues long before road signs existed. Some were even living grave markers, trees chosen to hold the memory of a person or a spirit long after the body had gone. Of course, colonizers didn't get the memo. In many areas, these trees were cut down, burned, or bulldozed. Logging companies didn't understand or didn't care that they were erasing generations of memory. That's the hard edge to this soft journey. Much has been lost, but not everything. Because here's your quieter truth. The song doesn't vanish. Even if the carving fades or the tree falls, the verse remains. Somewhere, someone still knows it. And when they hum it again, the memory returns, like a path that never forgot where it led, only waited for the right footsteps. You walk on, noticing other markers now that your eyes have adjusted. A boomerang embedded in a tree fork, not by accident. Someone placed it there, maybe years ago, maybe this morning, as a sign of passage. A tool made of knowledge and flight. You don't touch it, you just nod and move on. Farther ahead, a long stretch of red clay opens up. On its edge is a bark painting, faded, exposed to sun and wind, but somehow still vibrant. The ochre used in these works wasn't just art supply, it was sacred. Ground by hand, mixed with fat or sap, and applied with fingers or chewed sticks. And it lasts. Some pigments have remained vivid for over 20,000 years. And here's your quirky bit for tonight. In certain traditions, these paintings were sung into existence. The artist would chant the corresponding verse as they worked, literally singing the image onto the bark. Not just decoration, but documentation. Not just memory, but melody made visible. You pause before the painting. You don't recognize all of it, but parts ring familiar. There's a figure with emu legs and a curved staff. That's a trickster spirit from a neighboring group, a being who once tried to reroute the stars, but ended up trapped in a gum tree. The stars still shift awkwardly near his footprint in the sky. You smile, remembering the playful verse. As always, the best stories carry a little mischief. The path curves again, and your feet follow without question. Your song picks up where the painting left off, and now the rhythm feels more sure-footed, more grounded. You know this stretch. You've walked it before. Maybe not in this lifetime, maybe not with this exact body, but your bones remember. You pass a fallen tree hollowed by time and termites. It makes a soft, resonant sound as the wind moves through it. A low whoosh, almost like a didgeridoo. It's not music. It's the land reminding you it can make its own tunes without your help. And you, only a temporary guest, just hum along. Scholars still debate how bark paintings were used in navigation. Were they specific waypoints? Abstract meditations? Did they evolve over time, like updates to a software patch? No one knows for sure. The paintings were meant to be interpreted through song, not studied silently in galleries. But you're not in a gallery. You're here. And the land is not still. It is actively responding to your voice, your steps, your quiet participation. You pause again to rest. The moon is higher now, its light pooling in the low spots like liquid silver. You sit by another tree, its roots twisted like old rope, and close your eyes. The song is still with you, not loud, not even voiced, but running like a current under your thoughts. You know the next verse. You could walk it with your eyes closed. In fact, you almost do. as you continue. The handprint lingers in your mind, like the echo of a voice you almost remember. Not quite yours, but not entirely unfamiliar either. You keep walking, now more aware than ever that the path is shared, even if no one else is in sight. Someone else hummed this same verse recently. Maybe not in your dialect, maybe not at your pace, but the song passed this way. And now, so do you. The path ahead is narrow, edged by low shrubs that brush your legs as you go. Their touch is dry but not unpleasant, like the rasp of old paper. A breeze stirs them into soft motion, whispering secrets that only make sense if you already know the language. You sing quietly to match the shift in terrain. This is a region that requires precision. Too far left and you'll hit a sinkhole. Too far right and the sand gets soft, slow. But the song knows, and your feet trust it. And here, as you tread between shrubs and shadows, another layer of the songline reveals itself, not in melody or rock or bark, but in language. Aboriginal Australia isn't monolithic. It's a vast, interconnected patchwork of more than 250 language groups, each with their own dialects, accents, and vocabularies. But the songlines? They cross those borders. They're multilingual, multicultural, and yet miraculously consistent. It's like singing your way across Europe without changing tune, just switching words, phrases, rhythms slightly to suit the region. Think of it as oral jazz, guided improvisation with set beats and agreed motifs. You adjust your verse here, swapping in a word your grandmother once taught you from a neighboring dialect. It fits. The path recognizes it. Mainstream linguists still marvel at how these vast oral traditions maintained their consistency over centuries without writing anything down. Some argue it's impossible, but you're doing it, right now, with each step and syllable. There's a funny old saying you once heard from an elder. If you sing the song in the wrong language, the rocks pretend not to know you. Probably not literal, but you find yourself glancing at the stones just in case. One of the marvels of this multilingual song system is its built-in generosity. If you arrive in a region not your own, you don't just barge in. You announce your presence through the appropriate verse. You switch dialects, adjust rhythm, signal your intent. It's polite, it's expected, it's part of the structure, and in return, the land opens to you. Not everything is translated, though. Some verses are closed. They belong to a specific group, sung only in ceremony, only by the right person, in the right place, at the right time. You skip one of those lines now, out of respect. You know it by heart, but it's not yours to voice here. Instead, you walk in silence, letting the earth do the speaking. That's another thing the song teaches: restraint. You pass a tree with strips of bark missing, not from damage, but carefully peeled. This is another kind of memory. Bark removed in long, controlled slices, sometimes to build canoes, shields, or even burial platforms, but always done with care, and only after asking. Yes, asking the tree. There's a word in some languages for that practice, loosely translated as tree permission. You hum a small verse of thanks as you pass, not because you took anything, but because it feels right to acknowledge what was given here. Further on, a log lies across the path. You pause, considering. It's not impassable, but in the song, this section includes a joke. If the log is lying down, don't step over. Step around or lie down too. You grin and walk around. Sometimes wisdom comes disguised as silliness. And now the track curves into a grove of trees taller than anything you've seen all night. River red gums. Their branches arch overhead, creaking softly in the wind like a massive wooden choir. The songline here grows hushed, contemplative. You feel the shift in your chest. This isn't just scenery, it's a listening place. These spots are scattered along most major songlines, areas where travelers pause, not just to rest, but to receive, to listen for guidance. The tradition says that ancestors are more likely to speak here, that the veil between past and present is thinner beneath these branches. You sit, your back against one of the wide trunks, and close your eyes. The melody in your mind slows, almost stops. You're not here to sing now, You're here to hear. The trees sway, the wind murmurs. Somewhere far off, a night bird sings one sharp, solitary note. And then, from nowhere, a memory. Your aunt's voice. She's laughing, telling you that some songlines aren't sung out loud at all, but danced with the hands, drawn in the sand, or traced with a fingertip along your arm while you fall asleep. Not all knowledge needs noise. You open your eyes and find the grove gently glowing under moonlight. You rise, refreshed, and hum a line of re-entry, a soft, respectful tone to mark your departure from the listening place. You do. The scent in the air shifts subtly, less dry, more earthy. You're entering what the old songs call a meeting country, a zone between territories. It's not quite here, not quite there, a threshold. And thresholds always come with choreography. Ahead, a broad patch of open ground stretches between two clusters of trees. There are no signs, no gates, but if you walk this land long enough, you know. The temperature feels different. The wind moves in a sideways spiral. The verse changes too, not in melody, but in structure. You're now entering a section of the songline that must be sung with others. You hum the first line aloud, gently, then wait. Nothing responds, of course, but you pause anyway, because in ceremonial times, this is where you would rehearse with fellow travelers, just like practicing a duet, or a full choral arrangement. Songlines, after all, weren't just solitary pilgrimages. They were community acts, performed, memorized, adjusted together. You sit on a low log, imagining it. A circle of figures around a fire, each responsible for a verse. Children sitting cross-legged, learning through repetition. Elders correcting pitch or gesture with a tap of the finger. Someone singing the rhythm softly on a clapstick. Someone else walking the verse in slow motion, feet tracing invisible paths as the group watches, absorbs, and joins in. Mainstream anthropologists once thought of these performances as entertainment. They weren't. They were rehearsals. Regular, community-wide download sessions for knowledge too large to live in one brain. You rise and walk slowly across the meeting country. It's not performance time now, but your body knows the verse. You tap it softly with your heel. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. Each step beats out a cadence you didn't realize you remembered. There's a fringe belief here that your heartbeat will sync to the rhythm of the land if you rehearse a verse enough times. Whether or not that's true, your chest does feel a bit steadier as you move. Rehearsal in this context wasn't just about memory, it was also about respect. You didn't just wake up one day and decide to walk the line. You asked permission, you trained, you proved that you knew the melody, and more importantly, that you knew when not to sing. You recall a story from an old songmaster, a man with a voice like a worn drum. He once told a group of children, "If you can't remember the next line, sit down. The land doesn't like guessing." They giggled, of course, but they also nodded. You walk to the edge of the clearing where the soil turns lighter, almost white under the moon. Shell fragments dot the ground. That tells you something else. This area once hosted a major gathering, possibly involving hundreds of people, and not just one group either. Songlines often acted as bridges between nations. A ceremonial exchange of verses allowed people who spoke entirely different languages to travel, trade, and teach each other. The song acted like a passport. If you knew the right verses, you could pass safely through someone else's country. It wasn't just polite, it was essential. The land might feed you in your own tongue, but it only truly welcomes you if your voice matches its memory. That's the power of a shared melody. And like any good rehearsal, these group gatherings had rules. Everyone participated. Even those who couldn't sing, children, elders, visitors, would tap, clap, or echo. Silence wasn't exclusion. It was a verse in itself. You didn't have to be loud to be heard. You reach a small ring of stones, half buried in the dust. You sit again, as someone once did, and try to imagine a full rehearsal here. Firelight, smoke spiraling into a sky freckled with stars, a chorus of voices moving in and out of harmony, some low and rasping, others high and clean, and somewhere in that crowd, a child leaning into their parent, eyes wide, feet twitching with the rhythm of learning. Your own foot twitches now. The melody in your head returns with a bit more bounce. This next stretch of song is known for its playfulness, a rare trait in a system so laden with sacred responsibility. But even ancient memory allows room for mischief. There are whole verses dedicated to teasing, jokes about lazy wallabies, greedy lizards, or travelers who fell asleep under the wrong tree and woke up married. You hum one of those lines now and chuckle. It's nice to know that a tradition so vast still makes room for laughter. One of the fringe facts that makes the rounds in academic circles, some songlines include intentionally incorrect verses meant to test learners. If you sang it wrong and no one corrected you, that was a sign of being untrusted or unready. Imagine your navigation app throwing in a fake turn just to make sure you're paying attention. Harsh? Maybe. Effective? Definitely. You rise again and begin the next segment of the path, your voice low, your steps light. The stars above you remain. So do the shells. So does... The chant carries you forward now, steady and looping like a soft drumbeat under your thoughts. This part of the songline isn't about elegance or artistry. It's about endurance, designed to match the rhythm of walking over long distances, across country that doesn't change much, mile to mile. Open scrubland, low shrubs, hard ground, not much drama, just you and the melody keeping pace together. But don't be fooled by the monotony. The verses here carry warnings. They do it subtly, embedded in rhythm changes or tonal shifts, so gentle you might miss them unless you've learned to feel the difference. A slightly dropped pitch might mean snake territory, a pause before the next phrase. That could signal sacred ground or a spiritual hot spot where walking off path is not recommended. You pass a flat rock with a curl-shaped groove etched deep into it. Natural erosion? Maybe, but the song includes this exact stone in one verse. It's described as the sleeping coil of the spirit eel, a being said to rest in the stone by day and travel through the dreams of walkers by night. Charming, unless you forget to hum the eel's verse correctly. Then, according to the story, you get headaches, or strange dreams, or your food tastes like salt for a week. You hum the line again, just to be safe. And this is one of the most fascinating things about songlines as survival tools. They're not just maps, they're manuals, travel guides, trail warnings. They carry every piece of information you need to stay alive in a land that, let's face it, doesn't suffer fools. One line might carry instructions on where to walk in the heat. Another might remind you which direction to face when collecting water, or how to tell a safe bush tomato from the bitter, stomach-cramping kind. The song remembers what you forget. Here's a mainstream fact. Some modern survival experts, after studying these oral traditions, admit that the accuracy of environmental knowledge passed through songlines rivals modern bush survival training. That's right, your uncle humming an off-key verse about itchy leaves might just save your life faster than a first aid manual. And then there's the concept of boundaries, not fences, not lines on a map, but invisible divisions maintained entirely by song. The next verse you're about to sing carries one such boundary, a tonal shift so precise you can hear when you've crossed into another group's land. It's not about fear, it's about respect. You pause as you reach a tree marked by a faint white stripe on the bark, not painted, burned in, a subtle brand indicating a shift in stewardship. Your voice softens. The next few lines must be sung quietly, a kind of spiritual handshake as you pass through. According to tradition, you'd wait here, call out your verse, and listen. If someone responded with the matching echo, you'd continue. If no one answered, you'd sing a passing through version and move gently, sticking close to the path. No shortcuts, no loud talk. The land knows when you're being polite. Fringe anthropologists call this melodic diplomacy. And frankly, it makes more sense than most government summits. You continue, now more aware of each step. The trees grow thicker again. The underbrush crowds your ankles, and the song takes on a swaying rhythm, a side-to-side gait. The melody is doing half the walking for you, reminding you to weave, not march. A small snake slithers across your path, striped, quick, and utterly uninterested in you. But the song? It warned you. The line before this segment included a phrase about paths that flicker, a reminder to watch the ground. You murmur a thank you verse and continue on, this time stepping a little higher, just in case another reptilian friend is feeling bold tonight. You come to a narrow ravine, steep-walled and echoey, even in this gentle night air. Your footsteps click against the stone differently here, sharper, like a tapping stick in ceremony. This is a spirit place, not because anything glows or moves, but because the song drops to almost nothing here. No melody, just rhythm. The ancient belief is that voices carry too far in ravines, that if you speak loudly, the ancestors will hear you, and not all of them are in a chatty mood. So you step carefully, letting your breath match the pace of your feet. The silence feels sacred, but not heavy, like walking through a library of the land's oldest stories. The rocks on either side tower above you, pale under the moon, ancient beyond measurement. Some of these stones were sung about before the Sahara was a desert. Historians still debate whether the idea of sacred geography is metaphorical or literal in Aboriginal songlines. The truth, as always, is both. If a place is treated as sacred for 500 generations, its meaning becomes part of the world's DNA, regardless of outsider interpretations. As you exit the ravine, the melody returns gradually, first as a hum, then as a low verse, like the land is welcoming. The curve behind you fades into the silence, like a verse that's been sung and released. Ahead, the land flattens again, but not in the dull way of long stretches of sameness. This flatness feels intentional, like a blank page before the next chapter. Your footsteps soften. The song shifts again, slow but anticipatory. You are entering a place where memory and movement don't align the way they used to. This is colonial country, and the song here gets quiet. Not because it has nothing to say, but because it's saying too much. You notice it immediately. The path you've been following begins to blur. Trees once familiar give way to fence lines. There's a sharpness in the air now, not just cooler, but more angular. A different kind of story has taken root here, one layered awkwardly over the original. A rusted metal gate leans against a post ahead, long since broken off its hinges. You step around it, not because it blocks your way, but because it doesn't belong to the song. The melody stumbles slightly, like a singer clearing their throat. You try to hum the next line and realize the verse here was never finished, or maybe it was interrupted. That's one of the great fractures in the world of songlines, the collision of mapped and unmapped, of systems so fundamentally different they couldn't hear each other. When colonists arrived, they brought their own songs, written ones, sung in ink and boundary lines, laid flat on a continent they barely understood. And the first thing they did was ignore the existing melody. They drew lines across paths walked for 60,000 years. They built fences across trade routes, planted towns atop sacred sites, changed names, flattened meaning. The result? This part of the songline became a silence. You reach a clearing where the grass has been mown unevenly, the soil compacted into paths by cars and livestock. Somewhere nearby is a small homestead, its roof glinting faintly in the moonlight. The wind carries the smell of oil, metal, and eucalyptus bark. And in the middle of this, a tree stump, hacked, splintered, wide as a drum. You stop. This was a message tree once. You don't need to be told. You feel it. The way the roots still hold the ground like a hand. The way the grass avoids growing where the canopy used to cast its shadow. The song doesn't mention this tree anymore, but it lingers, as memory often does, in the quiet between lines. You hum softly, unsure which verse to use here. Then you remember a line passed to you by a distant cousin, one designed for broken places. It's not part of your original route, but it fits. You sing it gently, a tone of apology, of of recognition, of remembrance. It's not a repair, but it's something. Here's a mainstream fact. Many of the maps used by early explorers in Australia were deeply flawed. They ignored indigenous knowledge systems entirely, which led to confusion, starvation, and, famously, being completely lost in territories that local communities had been navigating flawlessly for thousands of years. The expedition of Burke and Wills is a classic example. They perished in the desert, within reach of water and food sources known to nearby Aboriginal groups. But the explorers never asked, never learned the songs. They walked deaf through a singing land, and the land didn't sing back. And that's the tragedy of this section of your journey. It's not the loss of geography, it's the loss of conversation. Still, some verses remain. You pass a pile of stones stacked oddly, too deliberate to be random. Someone else tried to mark the path. Maybe recently, maybe generations ago. You pause, lay your hand on the top stone, and hum a line from your earliest training. The path changes, but the foot still remembers. You walk on. Beyond the homestead fence, the land begins to recover. The grass grows taller again. The shrubs return, and with them, the melody. It's hesitant at first, like a musician testing their instrument after a long silence. But it builds. You see a stand of trees ahead, older, their bark dark and peeling in curls. The song references them as the trees who kept the line. They weren't destroyed, maybe by luck, or maybe because someone remembered what they were. They mark a turn in the verse, a return to a stretch still sung with confidence. You touch one as you pass and feel it vibrate, faintly, or maybe that's just your heartbeat. Scholars still argue how much of these roots were lost. Some claim the damage is irreparable. Others insist that every verse, even the interrupted ones, can be revived. Not in some perfect historical reenactment, but in lived, felt experience. Every time someone hums the song, the melody strengthens. That's your hope as you walk, that your voice adds one thread to the braid. Ahead, you spot another scar tree, this one still standing. Its bark has grown in around the old cut, like lips holding a secret. You hum a greeting, just in case it remembers you. And that's when you see it. A foo. The footprint fades behind you, but its echo stays in your stride. It's a gentle kind of reassurance, not that you're being followed or watched, but that the song still lives in others, out there. People you may never meet, singing their own verses, walking their own pieces of the line. You're part of a choir that never assembles, but always sings in harmony. The landscape around you changes again. The soil darkens, richer now, more moisture in the air. Trees grow closer together, their trunks white and sinewy like stretched limbs reaching for the stars. You're descending gently, though the change in elevation is so subtle it feels more like a shift in mood than in altitude. Your song slows again. You feel it settle into your chest like a sleeping bird. You are approaching a place of remembering, not a sacred site in the formal sense, but a stretch of land where stories cluster like leaves after a storm. Elders say the songline here is thick. Every step feels like flipping a page in a book that never ends. To your left, a massive rock leans at an angle, half embedded in the earth, as though it landed long ago and decided never to move again. The song calls it the Listening Rock. In the story, it heard every song that passed its way and grew heavier with memory. You place your hand on its cool surface and whisper your verse into the air, not for guidance, just for witness. There's a funny, lesser-known belief that the rocks along the songlines don't just hold memory, they remember who you are. Some even say that if you lie down with your ear to a stone long enough, it will whisper your real name back to you. Not the name given at birth, the one the land knows. You try it, just for a moment. You lie on your side, ear pressed to the stone, heart slowing. You hear wind, maybe distant birds, or maybe it is your name. You get up slowly, you've got more walking to do. The next segment of the line curves through a patch of soft soil scattered with seeds and dry pods. The song here becomes staccato, playful again. This is animal country. According to the melody, this is where the animals first received their roles in the world. The kangaroo got his spring. The was told to complain about everything, and he's been following orders ever since. You pass a patch of flattened grass, probably from a kangaroo resting earlier in the night. You smile and hum the verse about the kangaroo who refused to stop bouncing, even in his sleep. A line meant for children, perhaps. But like most children's verses, it carries practical advice. Don't run when you should rest. Don't bounce through sacred places. Respect the ground. Ahead, a low bank of stone marks another curve. This one's a circle point, where two different versions of the song overlap. You've reached a section that has two alternate melodies, depending on whether you're traveling inland or returning from the coast. You pause. Your direction tonight is forward, inland to heart country. So you choose the inland version, lower key, longer syllables, a kind of descending scale that matches the way your feet are beginning to drag just slightly. And here's the brilliance of this system. The song paces your body. It notices fatigue before you do. If your feet ache, the melody slows. If the terrain levels, the verse extends. You never push, you just match. Anthropologists have started calling this biocultural synchronization, but you prefer your auntie's version. The land walks with you if you let it. You stop by a cluster of bushes, one of which is blooming despite the dry, tiny white flowers. The song says this is the place where the star woman dropped her blanket, and the ground grew soft in sympathy. You don't pick the flowers, you just sit near them, absorbing their presence, like lyrics waiting to be sung, and as you rest, you hear it again. Not a voice, not quite, more like a shadow of a tune drifting on the breeze. Someone else, perhaps far off, humming a verse similar to yours. Not your version exactly, but close. Another dialect, another memory, another traveler. And in that moment, the invisible web of voices past and present gathers itself again. You're no longer a single thread. You're part of a fabric that stretches across the continent. And it doesn't matter that you'll never meet the singer. The harmony's enough. You rise again, refreshed. The path before you narrows slightly, hemmed in by tall spinifex that rustles in time with your footsteps. It's like applause, soft and syncopated. You hum louder now, not for show, but because it feels right. You are approaching convergence, a place where songlines intersect, and where ceremony once rose from the ground like smoke. The melody becomes layered, familiar, yet intricate. The lines twist through one another like threads woven in the wind. And you know you are nearly there, not an end point, but a joining place. Scholars still struggle with how to define Sioux. You arrive at the song circle, not with fanfare, but with a hush. The path delivers you quietly into a shallow basin ringed by trees that seem older than sleep itself. The clearing is broad, flat, and bathed in moonlight, the kind that makes even the shadows look gentle. It's here the melodies merge. Not collide, not compete, just blend, like streams meeting in silence. You step into the center, feeling the weight of the place. Not pressure, never pressure. Just a deep awareness that this is where the songs have always wanted to take you. You don't speak. You don't need to. The air is already full of verses that have never stopped being sung. And though no other people stand beside you, the clearing does not feel empty. Every step you've taken, every twist of melody, every pause to listen, every respectful silence, has layered this place with presence. This is not the end of your journey. Songlines don't end. They loop, they shift, they echo forward into generations yet unborn. But this is a moment of stillness, a full stop after a long rolling sentence. You sit in the center of the circle. The ground is cool. The moon overhead holds its breath. You exhale softly, and with it the last full verse of the line you've walked. It's not triumphant, it's not sorrowful, it just is. A tone of arrival, a note that says, you came, you remembered, you sang what you were taught, you listened when the path went quiet, and the land remembers you for it. You lie back gently on the grass, eyes drifting toward the stars. The emu in the sky has turned again, her dark shape now arching westward. She's watching, or sleeping, or perhaps just being sung by someone else far across the desert. In the stillness, the last teachings arrive. They're not loud, they don't need to be. They are the things the land only says when it's sure you're truly listening. That walking a songline isn't about reaching a destination, it's about learning how to walk. That every step you take becomes part of the story, even the uncertain ones. That the world is not a place you travel through, it's a memory you help carry. And in that final, lingering moment before sleep finds you, you hum the last gentle tone. It's not for the land, it's for you, because knowing the land means singing it, softly, forever. Now, you let the breath slow, in through the nose, soft as a morning breeze, out through the mouth, easy and warm. The song is behind you now, not gone, just resting in the distance, folded into the land like mist into dawn. You've walked far tonight, through time, through story, through space. And now, the earth is ready to hold you. Your feet are still, the cool grass beneath them cradling every memory. Your fingers relax, as if they've been holding the melody gently, and now they release it, like a bird flying back to the stars. The night settles deeper. The wind, if it still moves, does so only to say, sleep now. And you do. You remember that every rock, every tree, every whispering wind was part of a song once. And now, so are you. Let the emu in the sky turn slowly overhead. Let the footprints of ancestors pad quietly in the dust behind you. Let your dreams wander soft hills and quiet rivers. And if you find yourself humming as you sleep, don't be surprised. That's just the land singing you back. Gently. Always. Good night.